being with us this morning on this City Council emergency meeting on 15th of April of 2023. I'm Mayor Rubio, will be conducting the meeting today. I would like to take the prerogative to add to the agenda this morning before we get into the actual agenda items. I'd like to start the meeting with a prayer this morning. I've asked Gene Lowe if he would be kind enough to open this meeting with a prayer. Then we'll ask Councilmember Barker to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All in heaven, we express gratitude and thanks unto thee for the many blessings to enjoy. We're grateful for the blessing we have in this beautiful area of North Dakota. Grateful for those brothers and sisters who are working to solve challenges and problems which have arisen. We pray that guidance will be here today, and that guidance to discuss will solve problems and lead to our solutions. We ask our blessings to be of all those in authority and make decisions which will influence all of our lives. May we be inspired and guided by thee. May we have concern and love for one another, looking for the solutions and shall have all this. These many blessings and all those we give you thanks for, and ask them from the weakness in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please repeat the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Councilmember Barker. On our agenda today, I think there's a amendment we'd like to make. We surely want to hear from our citizens this morning. Left off the agenda, so Council, if you agree with that, I'd be looking for a motion to add public comments to the beginning of our agenda this morning.
Mayor, I motion that we allow public comments starting now. I would recommend that we limit them to about 3 minutes this time, just because of the nature of the special meeting and trying to get through things as promptly as possible.
Okay, we have a motion to add to our agenda public comments this morning. Limiting those to 3 minutes. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor of adding public comments limiting to 3 minutes this morning, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Mayor, I have one other amendment to the agenda.
Councilmember Swanson.
I'd like to move that we limit the meeting to 9:15, maximum in length, so that we keep our comments brief and to the point. And we allow everybody to get to other personal commitments that they have this morning.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Swanson. We will adjourn the meeting at 9:15 this morning. Do we have a second to his motion?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Barker. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion also passes unanimously. We will now begin our meeting then with public comments. If you'd like to comment on the subject of today, if you would step to the podium, and please state your name, your resident of North Ogden, and as previously discussed, please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. We'll take public comments.
My name is Bryce Dalton. I live at 905 East, 1700 North. In my opinion, I believe we should dredge the south side of the ditch, taking care to prevent that debris from flowing downstream and clogging the culvert further down line. I think it behooves us to put some grates in the culverts as we're dredging so that the large material doesn't go down and block further. But I do believe that if we did dredge that south ditch, it would allow us more CFM, the cubic feet per minute flow rate on that south side, so that when it does warm up here soon, that we'll be able to accommodate that water.
Thank you, Bryce. John, do we have anyone online that wants to comment before we hear from Mr. Huntsman?
Nope.
Okay.
Good morning, Council, Mayor, Steve Huntsman, North Ogden. I just want to say thank you. You're getting a lot of complaints from a lot of people, and it's really hard on you. I know, I understand that. We know that under Title 73 of the Utah Code, it gives you a lot of public authority over the water. That is a public responsibility, and so we, as the city, you as the city council, have that responsibility. And so I just want to thank you for that, because you understand that the only limitations to that are private property rights. So as you work with the private property owners, thank you for working with us. I walked yesterday up to the high elevations above 5,000 feet last night, just to go and see where all the water is coming from out of the two canyons. It's really fantastic to watch what's happening as it's shooting out, which the mayor showed me the other day, a video of this amazing amount of water coming out at about 5,300 feet. A lot of that water on the canyon, I call it One Horse Canyon, it's actually going back underground, which surprised me yesterday. I've got GPS coordinates, videos of every stream this is coming. I think most of all our water is coming out between Garner Canyon and One Horse. I've got good videos showing exactly where the water is coming down. It's unprecedented how much water is coming down. And I'm hearing reports it's only probably maybe 10% or less of the total water that's about to come down. We've got a very short window here, in my opinion, of what could come down if the water, if it gets warm, which you know, if it gets warm too quick, we're going to be in a lot worse condition than we are now. The stream that flows right by my house, we had some concern because somebody had messed with a grate that actually did cause some sticks and logs to come in that caused a lot of water to come flowing out. But when you look at this 4 foot deep that was once a runoff drainage, it's full. I mean, the rock is completely filled that entire thing with all the flow debris. That's not something that is a normal condition. It's 200% normal. So no matter what happened to any drainage, there was a lot of water coming over the top of any grates we had there. It was not something that anyone could predict. It's not something that that is normal in any condition, and any grate there is going to be completely backed up. So we've got a very short window here, and what I believe, and I think the city is addressing this short time frame before the warm temperatures get here, it could be so much bigger. So I'm just encouraging the city, you know, now is all hands on deck, and I've seen that from the city. I've seen the mayor and I've seen everybody out there helping. I think the faster we can get on this, which is a public responsibility to take care of this water, to help all the citizens, to get those ditches as clean as we can, and to get some grates, is something I think all the citizens in North Ogden are begging for help. So I'll be happy to share the videos even this morning, how clear the water is, how the debris is stopped. And so I think the faster we can get this cleaned up, and if we can help you in any way, we're happy to. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to comment this morning before we move forward on discussing it?
But don't go after you. That's why I'm on the back row.
That's why we can't have nice things.
Kevin, that'll be an extra 200,000.
I feel like somebody did that intentionally. Kevin Burns from North Ogden. Leave all the water moving to the experts and they'll do what you're gonna do, but I want to say in this day and age that we live in, there's a lot of division. Right here in North Ogden, we have a lot of division. And I'm a firm believer in nothing builds bonds like adversity. And if we face this adversity together, old North Ogden 1, this can be our common enemy. The water can be our common enemy, rather than bickering amongst each other for whatever silliness it is that we sometimes bicker about. So that's just my little word for today. I'm a firm believer in bonding through adversity. So when you're tired and you're hungry and you're thirsty, just remember the enemy's still coming. So hunker down and go. All right, thank you.
Jeff Clark, I'm at 885 East on 1700, so mine is the last section of open ditch. So I would just like to, well, first I want to thank everyone, great workers who have been up all night with all the residents. No sleep. We're all pretty haggard, but I appreciate it. And everyone who's come out and helped. So I've tried to express that gratitude and I hope they know that this is not we're very grateful. It's just getting something done. So, but my ditch now I think has got probably 18, 20 inches of gravel in it, I would guess. I mean, it's full, and a couple of you have seen that. The concern is if I go over, I'll sandbag this high, but my real concern is going to be the next house down and the house below that, because where's the water going to go? And there's a really high rise from my driveway to get the water up over the road to the other side, like we've been talking about. So I agree with Steve. We've got a short window here. The ditch is super low right now. Very low yesterday. It's very low right now. And I think it could be dredged with pretty minimal debris getting below me. I think there's ways to do it. Todd Kitchens, who lives over by us, who's an excavator, is going to try and be here today. He's done some of this where he set some blocks in. And the water can flow around it and over it, and it catches most of what is loose from the scoop. And you can control that, set that about 10 feet up from the opening of the culvert. So there are ways to do this, but I just don't think this window is going to be open very long to do it. It's be much more difficult when the water's, another 2 feet deep. So for what it's worth. Thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Swanson, for making this meeting happen. I really appreciate the conversation yesterday, and Jay too as well. Thank you.
Is there anyone online currently? Anyone else here like to comment? All right, I don't see any further comments, so we'll move into our the purpose of the meeting today is to discuss an action on the flood relief efforts on 1700 North, including whether or not to dredge the ditch on the south side of the roadway, and hopefully having adequate time. As I've said, we've got major issues we're going to be facing in addition to 1700, and we need to be prepared for those. So those today would be good too. So with that, Mr. Call, you want to lead the discussion in regards to some of the questions that I think have been proposed, so the council can gain an understanding of 1700 North. I think I think Chad came a couple council meetings ago and asked some questions, and you responded to those questions. But I think today, as I have a list of questions that came in, and we have Eric and Dave. Eric's our city engineer, and Dave is our director of public works with us today. And thank you for coming to help. What's our approach? What should we do? How can we help the citizens? And it's not all a legal obligation, I think, as we all know. We have, as the city elected officials here, as Steve indicated, to help and try to minimize effects on flooding in the city. So, John, would you like to take the lead, or Phil, would you like to take the lead on the discussion this morning?
I think John and David and Eric, they have some information to present. Is that correct?
I mean, we brought materials, so I do, because I think one question the council wanted to address was ownership, the question around ownership.
Yeah, if we could start with that question. There's been a question as to whose ditch is it? And we've had quite a few different answers. I'll apologize for my misunderstanding of the situation there with the ditch that may have caused some of the rest of you to have some misunderstanding as well. But John, it's my understanding that it is the city's ditch. We don't have to maintain landscaping. We are responsible to maintain water flow. Is that correct?
Yes, kind of, and maybe so. So the reason it's,
Okay.
I know, so this,
Right.
and this
I
is
know
part
it's
of the,
complicated.
this is part of the confusion that came out of the last meeting. The city didn't build the ditch.
Right.
It was there before the city took control of it. As near as I can tell, it was built back in the 1890s or before by Joseph Barker and Company. And was maintained as a ditch. Yeah. And it was maintained as a ditch, and somewhere between 1962 and 1985 is when the majority of the homes went in. There were some homes there before, but the ditch was primarily used to irrigate about 40 acres, which is about everything east of the LDS church on 1700 and down to 1500. From what I can tell by the property records, it was late last night as I was looking at this. But the reason I say it's complicated on who owns the ditch is those users don't exist anymore. And so the question on who the ditch belongs to is confusing. But for the city's perspective, the city, as mentioned by Mr. Huntsman, is in charge of stormwater. It is our, let's see, I wrote it down. It's our job to do the best we can to keep stormwater flowing where it's supposed to flow and mitigate property damage and loss of life. The state makes it very clear that in the event there is a loss, property loss or something, the government's not liable legally, liable for any damage because storm is a common enemy, water is a common enemy. And that's why in that meeting 4 weeks ago, we talked about that it's everyone's job to keep the water off their property. Is because it's a common enemy, you need to protect your own things. But it is expected for the city to have storm drain channels, maintain them, and in the event of a flood, try to keep the water moving in a safe location. So it's kind of this weird nuance where we didn't build the ditch, we didn't ever take legal title to the ditch, but we own the ground underneath it, and we have that expectation of keeping it going, keeping it flowing. And with that, a good example is it doesn't look to me like, it looks like most of those culverts were installed before the city before the owner stopped using the irrigation water. So it's not like there would have been permission from the city to install the culverts. But I will say that my opinion at this point, this is city manager opinion now, not attorney opinion, is that now that we know that there's the risk of the plugging in the issues, that I think stormwater should go in and enlarge the culverts. That's the opinion now that we know the things that we know after this unprecedented event, like Mr. Huntsman mentioned. So did that clarify, or did I just make it worse?
Well, I guess ownership really doesn't matter. We have an obligation to help our citizens control the flooding. Right? So whether it's ownership or not, we have that obligation. So even though it's confusing.
Yeah, my misunderstanding was as we had those conversations about whose responsibility maintenance was, I misunderstood the separation between maintaining landscaping and maintaining water flow. I overgeneralized the word maintain, that it was the individual homeowner's responsibility to maintain water flow and landscaping and everything else, and that was my mistake.
Okay, so that answers one question. I think the second question is responsibility for maintaining the water flow. I think that was answered, if I understand correctly. Is that clear to everyone? John, do you have any further comments on that?
No,
Okay.
Maybe.
well, just one little nuance. When it's not a flood event, the normal expectation is property owners that have water or debris falling into natural waterways, they have an obligation to get it out. That's just, again, state code, but it's not as applicable these months or this month.
Okay. And I think the other questions that I saw on the list, I think have been addressed in that comment. Even if we didn't have a legal obligation, we surely want to help the citizens as much as we can. Balancing out, obviously, we have bigger problems to come. I mean, this is a big problem. As I told Mr. Jones, if I was on his street, that'd be my main focus. We know there's going to be water coming off the north face too, so we trying to balance all these things. The last item that I see on the question would come from a discussion with Eric and Dave advising the council from their standpoint regarding dredging of the ditch. So I'd like to hear, if that's okay, council, from Eric, starting with Eric as our city engineer. And then from Dave. I think one of the main purposes is today is how do we minimize the known flooding right now? It's coming down 1,700. So Eric, would you kind of give us your thought on the dredging of the ditch and if we should, and if so, how we go about it? So would you speak up, come to the podium, please?
Thanks for this opportunity. Appreciate it. I took a drive this morning and went up there and kind of tried to assess the situation there. And I'm glad to see that the water has come down considerably. And one of the main concerns that I would have about dredging at this time would be the plugging of the pipe, as been expressed in previous comments. If we can prevent the debris from plugging up that pipe, that begins about 885, 1700, then I think there could be a possibility of dredging it. Having a check dam per se that could collect the debris could be a possibility, I think. With the warmer temperatures coming, my recommendation would be to wait at this time and see if we could see what the flows would do. Tuesday, Wednesday, I think was the major flood, the major water event that we had. And that I don't think I would expect that to happen again. But I would recommend that we either wait for the warmer temperatures and to kind of assess the situation and then take steps to mitigate the debris flowing down that pipe. Regardless if we do it now or later, in my opinion, we will have to mitigate the debris going down that pipe. I don't know the current situation of that pipe on how much debris is in that pipe at the current moment. Looking at the end of the pipe at 885, it doesn't seem like there's a lot. But I don't know what went down further, if there was problems previously, and what kind of if those problems have been increased at this time. So hopefully that has answered some questions.
Let me ask the council if they have questions while you're up here, Eric. Does anyone have questions? Right. Councilmember Dalpas.
Can you tell us more about the dam that you mentioned, the collection dam? I'd like more information on that.
It was mentioned earlier that there could be blocks or some like we call it a check dam, or I call it a check dam, to where the water would overflow over the top of it and debris would settle down behind the check dam. There could be a grate that could be installed in front of the pipe to help collect larger debris. That would have to be maintained and cleaned regularly. And but that could be a possibility. With the flows that could come, it would have to be, I think, a considerable dam, a considerable check dam that would have to be constructed there so that it wouldn't wash out and then become debris itself.
Any other questions? Eric, I do have one additional question. Is there any other alternative to minimize the potential flooding and controlling this water other than dredging? Are there any alternatives? I think the goal here is to try to prevent loss of property and life, et cetera here. So do you see any other alternatives that could minimize this other than dredging?
Then dredging, like with an excavator?
Any
type thing, or
alternative you
alternative?
see,
Okay.
if dredging is not the answer, then are there other alternatives that you see to help these folks out?
I think another alternative, a method of I guess dredging, would be use a vacuum truck. And I mean that would help alleviate a lot of the debris, the large debris that could result in using an excavator or some other large equipment. I would still recommend the check dam to alleviate any fines or anything larger going down that pipe. And like I said, I don't know that what's down that pipe or what the condition of it is at the current state. So, but that would be my recommendation is that.
So is there a way to find out what is further down there? Can we camera that down there and see what's down there?
Yeah, that's a possibility. It could be cameraed and look
Find out where we're at and what the ramifications are. I'm just looking for any alternative to try to minimize the situation here.
right.
Okay, any other questions of Mary, council member, Beckman, please?
Okay, just my position. I plan for the worst. I'm a Jensen. You see that my dad planned for the worst and in front of his house, you know, my brother's house is flowing beautifully. So I want to do what it takes to plan for the worst. Say, for instance, it all comes down. Do we have time to build this dam if we get on it quickly?
I think right now, I think it could be a possibility, yes. And that would take time to build the dam. So yeah, I mean, I think you do. I think you do have enough time. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. Would it help, you know, as Jeff Clark mentioned in his, it's the creek bed is rising, right? It's like depositing and then it's just getting higher and higher. Can we just dig out even what has been brought down so far so that there's just more room, you know, in case more water comes, it's just less space for it to rise and flow over.
Right.
So, you know, so my questions are like, where to dredge, how much and how often? So, and I don't know if you have your crystal ball to tell me that.
I wish I did. Yeah. Because really, and that's why I would recommend that we hold off and we see what it throws at us here Sunday, like today, Sunday, Monday, that we see what the temperatures throw at us. And if we find that the waters either remain the same or maybe increase a little bit, that we put a plan together and we go forth and we dredge, we build the dam, and we work on solutions on that way. That's the reason I would say hold off and wait to see what it throws at us. Because right now, I would like to know, I didn't see any property damage going on at this time being caused by the current flows. But I could be wrong on
It
that.
was 40 degrees
Hold on,
yesterday.
hold
and
on.
frozen.
We don't take
Right.
comments from the audience. We'll have some public comments at the end here, but we're trying to keep order here in the meeting. So Eric, just a question, since we're kind of looking for prevention. Just clarify this in my mind, if we wait to see what happens, the water flow may be too high to dredge. I'm looking, you know, if I understood right, our job is to try to prevent. So I'm kind of like to be proactive instead of reactive. So I'm confused, how would we, if that flow comes down, how would we ever dredge that thing? Would it be too late?
And it wouldn't be too late. So that's why I say Tuesday, Wednesday, it seemed to be the worst that we had seen. The diversion dam that was coming across 1700 to the north side seemed to be taking quite a bit of flow. And that was something that I was looking to try to divert more water over to the north to try to alleviate the south side with that dam. And so I agree with you, Mayor. I think the prevention is the best. I'm concerned that the pipe, like I said, I don't know the current situation, and I think that would be a good idea to look at the current situation of the pipe. That's at 85. Let's see what that is, because if we go in and dredge now, we could increase the plugging of that pipe if it is plugged.
And we can camera that to see what our risk is. And
Right, correct, yeah.
Right.
And if we do end up plugging that pipe, then the water then backs up even further. And to get it across 1700, especially at 885, the ditch is so low and the road is so high at that location that then there would be major problems that would affect the south side houses. So,
Thank you. John, is that you raising your hand down there?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question because I think one of the concerns I've heard from maybe the public works guys is, as we dredge, we risk impacting the integrity of the ditch that's currently being held together by even just grass makes a difference. And so I guess maybe I'd like to understand if we affect the grass and the stuff holding the vegetation together, and then we get increased flows, what does that increase our risk, or what does it do for us?
it does, yes. The grass line ditch right now is kind of our saving grace. It's holding those banks together. As we saw up on Fruitland and 1700 right there by the stop sign, we've undercut the road, undermined the road because there was no vegetation. There was nothing there to hold the ground in place. And so yes, I would agree with that comment that if we do damage the root system, the grass that's holding that soil there, that we could end up with more undercutting and widen the ditch. The water would essentially widen the ditch through erosion.
Thank you. All right, Dave, Steve I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep a little bit of order here, and thank you for helping us, everyone. Dave, did you have some comments?
So, council, a lot of my recommendation was based on.
Can we get that light?
Yeah. So a lot of my recommendation was based on just the ability and the manpower that we have currently with Public Works. So we have 30 guys in Public Works working shift work right now. So every 8 hours on, we have guys working. And so we're basically right around 10 guys per shift, right? And so we just wanted to give you guys an idea, like these are all the channels, all 7 of these places right now are having flow. And some of them are huge flow, like, so Mountain Water doesn't have a ton, but number 2, Rice Creek, there's a ton of water there. And a lot of that is coming from North Ogden City. It's because we had to turn out the spring, you know, we're adding an extra, you know, over 1,000 gallons a minute down that creek because we had to turn out Rice Creek. And so we're having to watch that one. North Ogden Canyon, that one we had to turn out for the first time in about 14 years. We had to turn North Ogden Canyon out yesterday, so that's another one that we're watching. Right, our Coldwater's starting to flow, number 4. It hasn't made it all the way down, but we're starting to see those flows. Number 5 is kind of back up, sorry. That is, we call it the Lakeview system. It captures all the water from the west side of North Ogden and works its way down through all the neighborhoods, eventually making it all the way to 2700 here. Number 6 is the one that we are talking about right now. And then number 7, we call that the Mud Creek system there. And that is kind of, all of those converge, and then we try to help get that out of the city right there, right? And so, along with the 1700 stuff, we're trying to spread out our guys throughout the whole city to go capture all these other ones. And so yesterday, when we were asked, we completely agreed with the citizens when they were saying, hey, the temperatures are low, like the flows have slowed down, like, can we go get some of that stuff done? And we were able to go pick up the debris, but then we had North Ogden have to get turned out, which we had to go monitor that. I mean, it washed out most of our road in North Ogden County. And then we had Rice Creek system, which is just, like I said, it's between the runoff and the spring that we turned out. I mean, it's a lot of water, which is also collected behind a ton of homes. So it's a lot less accessible than 1700. Not to be insensitive, but like that, it's just trying to get to some of those places and maintain some of those ones that are behind homes and different things. And so that's where we're at right now. We're just stretched a little thin, and like, so the 1700, we really felt like we had a pretty good control of it. Eric didn't talk about it, but Eric actually designed at Mountain Road in front of Mr. Huntsman's house, a kind of a check dam there as well, right? And so when we're talking about, I think there's a lot of people concerned about the debris that came down, and they should be, like, all of that debris came from the mountain. It made it all the way to all these guys' homes along 1700. It made it all the way down there, right? Well, we feel like we have structures in place now with the sandbags and the ability to clean it up, that we're capturing all of that at Mountain Road. So right now, we feel like all we're passing down is water. And that's why that's why I felt more comfortable about saying, hey, I think we can keep water monitoring 1700 from a standpoint of just being able to, because we had those checks on Mountain Road, we're being able to capture all that debris there, and very minimal debris is going down 1700. And so that's where, the Public Works and Eric's, that's where our recommendation was coming from, was that it was just that lack of manpower to be able to do the dredging and trying to maintain all these other spots at the same time. But I mean, if it's something that we need to bring in extra guys or even a contractor, I mean, it's something that we can definitely look at.
Okay, council, do you have questions for Dave?
Dave, can you explain?
Councilmember Ekstrom first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks,
Look that way.
Steve.
See, I have to try to keep order here too. So
I know.
It's multitasking.
I tend to muck up the works all the time, so sorry. about that. So Dave, look at these, they're awesome, right? They're there. We've got just this wonderful pool of really anxious and willing volunteers. Is there a way to utilize them? Can you, is this kind of work something that is going to take a lot of your leadership and because I know, I think they're very anxious to be of service to their neighbors. And, is there a way that we can organize them, or, what, these are their homes, right? So it's like, can they build the stop dam, or the check dam? Is that something that we could like say, okay, this is what it looks like, this is what needs to be done. Can we set them loose?
I think that's a kind of fair question to you guys, and I will Yeah, I will 100% agree with that. When Tuesday I got called out at midnight, I mean, we had just as many citizens at the shop as we had employees like coming into the shop, and we are very grateful for like their support, because if it wasn't for them, like it would have been chaos. Like they rallied and got everything together on 1700, and we were, so yeah, we're very grateful and thankful for that.
That reminds me, Councilmember Ekstrom and Dave, this may be something that's helpful too. I know Mayor Fippen from Far West has offered manpower and equipment to help us should we, and I mentioned this to John the other day. I think every mayor in the county is willing to help if we call upon them, if it's a shortage of manpower, and we think this is the answer to helping prevent the situation, in addition to the volunteers that Councilmember Ekstrom has mentioned. We do have access. They've offered to help wherever they can. I know when the trees went down, we helped them. So it's,
Absolutely.
I think it's a community, and I appreciate your comment, Councilmember Ekstrom. I think working together is the solution here. Without volunteers and without city helping, it would be a bigger problem. So I think the problem is even with volunteers doing it, we're going to need oversight to make sure it's done correctly. But that might be another resource.
Our attorney's raising.
Well, so with this particular, so volunteers helped us build the catch dam on Mountain Road as it was sheeting across the road. This situation, it can only be built with equipment. Because of the flows and the type of material putting in that won't wash away, because you can't put sandbags in, they'll wash away like we did on Mountain Road. And so it's equipment only. So volunteers aren't going to be as helpful as equipment operators are.
Councilmember Ekstrom, are you done there?
Well, it was just, somebody mentioned Todd Kitchens. Oh, we have some, volunteers that are equipment operators. So maybe it's just finding the right people for the right positions that, maybe we need to make a list of, okay, here's what we need, who's got skills, I don't want to put liability on anybody, you kind of have to suspend like it's your fault kind of stuff for a bit, just to say, hey, we're all helping, and John, our attorney's going.
So the city has absolute immunity. Individuals don't necessarily have absolute immunity. That would be up to the attorneys in the courts to figure out in 6 months, 3 years, however long after it goes.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Councilmember Severin?
Well, I was just going to ask you to define the word turnout. So I mean, does that mean it's been turned?
So, sorry, and so at Rice Creek and at North Ogden, we capture multiple, so at North Ogden, we capture multiple springs down the canyon, right? We have like 7 spring boxes that we capture water. And then it goes into our reservoir for our drinking water. And at some point, so there's turbidity that we have to watch. It's the cloudiness in the water. So we have to watch that, by state statute, we have to watch that very closely. And so what happens is at a certain point, we have to, if there's too much cloudiness in the water with particulates and different things, we have to turn that water out. And so we can no longer capture it for drinking water. We have to turn it into the ditches. And so that's what's happening right now. At North Ogden, we're turning out about 800 and something gallons a minute down the ditch. And at Rice Creek, the last time we seen it was over 1,000. So, that's water that we're not being able to capture for drinking water anymore. We're just having to put it right down the channels. And so those are the ones that, snake behind houses and different things. And so we're just, being very cognitive about that too. So.
Thank you.
I know that, Dave, you've identified high-risk flooding areas, and we do have numerous of those. Before I forget to, I'd like to thank the sheriff's office. They sent their drone up, and we surveyed each canyon along the east side of the city. there to see, where we're at. There's many here that probably remember when the mountain started moving in Coldwater Canyon a number of years ago. And we can see it starting. And so I just wanted to thank them too, in addition to everyone that's come out and helped. I just want to make a comment too before I forget, to thank Dave and his team. They came right off basically snow plowing 12, 14 hours a day to 24-hour coverage. And so I think in addition to all those citizens who have helped, I want to make sure that your team, that day, make sure they get some cookies.
Definitely get those cookies over there.
Okay, council, any questions for Dave?
Well, not.
I have one.
Councilmember Swanson,
Do we
please.
have a dredging bucket?
I mean,
One of those wide, narrow,
so we do have a 3-foot bucket that we'd be able to,
so it's more of a 3-foot excavating
yeah,
bucket, not one of those dredge.
yeah.
Yeah, one of those buckets.
Mr. Paul, do you have any further comments? Got the attention of the meeting today before?
So just if the council does decide to do the dredging, one thing that would be really helpful is the way we kind of approach this is that the council is making a policy shift and asking employees to follow the policy. So it'd probably be really good to have a council member designated as the person who tells Public Works when we've done enough. So someone on site, because having anybody else try and tell them what to do is not going to work. And so I think if we had we'd need a council representative who was the one the group was authorizing to say, okay, you've done what we've asked you to. And that might even go forward into all the rest of the areas of the city on the map. That in some ways we might be stepping up what we're committing to do across the city and letting us know, who's that person who's going to make that decision that that says, hey, this is when we need to do something different than what we're planning to do.
So, John, is that the definition of a flood czar?
Yes, a flood czar. I like that.
Do they get to use the big mallet?
Yeah.
And here's, David, I want to make sure, just from my standpoint, this is obviously council's decision, but we want to make sure you have the resources you need.
Yeah.
This is a very unique situation I think we're facing this year.
Oh, absolutely.
Probably one in 100 year. Of course, 83 wasn't 100 years ago, but so if we need to get some experts in here, I mean, not saying we don't trust you or Eric by any means, but we don't go through this regularly. There's probably people out there that maybe have some additional options. Know that once again, it's a council decision, but I'm pretty sure we want you to have the resources you need, and that's not always internal. Yeah. So let's go down and hear from each council member. Is that what you wanted to do? Let's see, I think we started with the last time. We want some relief. We want to start.
Either way.
Let's go down the line here. Let's start with council member Swanson. He's next in line from a previous meeting.
Why do I gotta go first?
We'll all get a chance, so
Yeah, we will.
go ahead.
This is a tough situation. Thought about, down there a lot the last few days. Talking to David, talking to Eric, talking to residents, talking to John, talking to council members. It's kind of we're kind of darned if we do and darned if we don't, right? If we do something and the pipe floods and homes get flooded, we get blamed for it. If we don't do anything and homes get flooded, we get blamed for it. I totally get where the residents are coming from, right? At your homes, you're right there, the water's flowing in front of your house. So I want you to know that I'm very empathetic and understand the concern that you have about your property. I always, when I'm trying to decide what to do, I always try to remember that motion doesn't always equal accomplishment. Sometimes we're just kind of moving in place without really getting anything done. So I want to make sure that if we do something, that we're not just kind of doing something because it feels good to do something, that if we do something, we're going to do something that actually matters, that actually makes a difference. I think we definitely need to TV the pipe from 885 from Mr. Clark's place down to see what, if any, blockages or what's laying down in there. I can't imagine too much big stuff got through the culvert there at Mr. Jones' house, because he's got the smaller culvert there. So I don't know that many of the big rocks would have gotten through there. They're probably all sitting in front of your culvert.
My culvert's actually open again.
What's that?
My culvert is actually open again. It is flowing.
It is flowing. Okay, great. So I think we ought to start there. I'm very cognizant of our resident experts and their recommendations, but the reason that I asked that we have this meeting is that council would really kind of rest with us in the end as to whether or not an action is taken, right? It's what we're elected to do, and so I wanted that responsibility to rest on our shoulders. I don't know what to do. I really don't. It's I'll put it this way, if there isn't any major blockages down the pipe from 885, anything that's of a major concern, I would say we go ahead and dredge it. If there is blockage down there, then we don't, because we've got to get that cleaned out so that we don't exacerbate an existing problem and really have problems by blocking that pipe as it goes through the city.
Councilmember Slunts, let me ask you a question before I move on.
Sure.
Councilmember Severin. While we're doing this, if we have the equipment out here, as the council, should we be identifying other areas since we're in the preventative?
Absolutely.
Should we be dredging, identifying and dredging every?
Well, we would kind of be obligated to do that, wouldn't we? We can't pick and choose. If there are other areas of significant concern, we would have to look at those and determine whether or not that also needs to be dredged.
Yeah. Just my point is that I think
It's not a commitment just to 1700. It's a broader commitment.
yeah, I think that's what Dave was trying to tell us here. We've got about 6 or 7 major issues here that we could be facing. So just wanted to clarify your position on
Yeah,
that.
I wrote that down as we were discussing.
Councilmember Severin, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I first off, I want to express thanks to the volunteers. I think it was actually, I shouldn't say this, but it was actually kind of fun Wednesday gathering with other people, trying to protect each other. So that was a good experience for me on Wednesday. Here's the big challenge for me. I've always lived by the principle, none of us is as smart as all of us. And I for sure am the first one to confess that I don't understand all of the details about water and the creeks and so forth like that. So I have to rely on the experts to give us guidance and direction and then make a decision. I'm wondering, and I do not want to, do not want to offend Dave or Eric. I'm just wondering if other cities have volunteered to help. Wonder if we were to get a couple of city engineers, maybe 3, looking at this kind of an issue and make a decision. I do think we need to be very proactive. Again, on Tuesday, Wednesday was very unprecedented. But I do think there might be some wisdom in maybe 2 or 3 different people looking at this and then making a formal decision. Who are engineers is what I mean by that.
Thank you. That's and once again, in offering resources, we have outside engineers who, probably could be utilized too. I'm not sure every city has an engineer. Some of the bigger ones do, but that's a good point, because I think I know our emergency manager's been a little bit nervous, having that responsibility on him, and it's always good to have a second opinion and help there. So good point. Good point.
Yeah, the county engineers.
I just think that, I think the different eyes on things, that collaborative opportunity. I had never thought about dredging affecting the strength of the banks. That had never even crossed my mind. Ask me about real estate, I can tell you anything, but I just don't, it's just not my expertise. So I'm making a decision 50-50, hoping that it's the right decision.
All right. Councilmember Barker, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I may disagree a little with Councilman Swanson. I'm not elected to make these decisions. We pay these guys to make these decisions, in my opinion. I'm not a water expert. Well, I'm really good at getting water to a fire. But getting it out of the city is not my expertise. If I'm gonna tell Eric and Dave how to do their job, why do I need Eric and Dave as city employees? So when they're giving these recommendations that we need to wait, I pulled up the weather for the next week. We got 60, mid-60 tomorrow, mid-60 Monday, and then it drops down into the 40s and 50s again for a week, for 10 days. I think that's why Eric's saying, let's wait and see what happens. Tuesday, Wednesday, when we had the biggest issues, we were in the 70s to 80s. Let's wait and see what happens, because it's not going to get, the temperatures are going back down. I think we have a lot bigger concerns if we plug that pipe. Right now, water's flowing, so I'm gonna rely on Eric and Dave when they say, let's wait. That's my recommendation, let's wait.
Thank you. Councilmember Ogden, please.
Okay, I agree. Let's look and see what we're dealing with downstream. Get the camera down the pipe and make sure we're not. You know, my concern is again, I think as Councilman Swanson said, let's not make it worse. You know, by doing something just because we want to do something, when we, we feel call to action that we don't actually end up making the problem worse. So I think seeing what we've got going, is something about it makes me really want to do that check down, just in case something starts to come down that we catch it first. And especially while the water's low, I think that would just be a good idea, because it really is debris that's the problem, more than the water, because it's like, as long as the water's flowing, it will go. But so that's what I'd like to do. I think it's just check the pipe and build the check down.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Councilmember Dalpas.
Yeah, I've been down on 1700 every day, sometimes multiple times a day, because I want to get a feel for what the flow is happening each day. First day, it was really bad. It was close to the top of some of the resident sandbags. The sandbags were doing its job, but it was scary. Next day, a lot better, had subsided a little bit, but we still had water going over the Jones residence culvert. Yesterday, I went at 8:30 in the morning, and Tim met me outside. He probably saw me, and we were kind of surprised that his culvert was starting to push through, and it seemed like an encouraging sign as far as the flow went. I feel strongly that we need to take the pressure off of the city employees and take the responsibility on our shoulders to make the decision. I do feel strongly that it would be of benefit to them. We will listen to their advice. We will listen to their guidance. We will do as much as we can. But at the end of the day, I do feel like it is our responsibility as elected officials to make a decision and move forward. We're making decisions that are to the best of our ability. I am not a professional in this, just as all of us are not professionals in this. But I was able to see, I'm really concerned about the property in front of Jeff Clark's house. There was points in his ditch that only had about 6 inches of water. I know he said maybe about 18 inches of places, but just very concerned about water getting through and getting through the system. And so it would be my recommendation that we dredge. I was able to walk the property of 1700 all the way down from Fruitland to 850-ish with private civil engineer that I trust. And we were able to, it was kind of his recommendation, we need to get some materials out of here to get water flowing in. There is a risk of the pipes getting plugged up. I think it's a risk, and it's a risk where we're going to be making a decision based off of the best information that we have available to us. I really did like resident Bryce's recommendation to have a grate that would catch large debris. And I would be willing to bet that the residents that live along 1700, even without having city employees stationed there, I would be willing to bet that they would be more than happy to have people on shifts watching those grates to make sure that they're not plugging up and that they'll, get things taken care of quickly if they do. And so it's my strong feeling and recommendation that we need to get a dredging situation going.
And that just reminded me as I look down here, Susan may be the only one that hasn't spent considerable time on 1700. Down there, maybe even Susan's been down there, I don't know.
No.
But I just want to thank the council for their involvement. I know last night as I drove by about 10 o'clock, I was a little bit relieved to see the flow stop, but that doesn't mean it's there. So council, just in summarizing the comments, here's maybe a thought for you to consider. It's obvious we want to do something. I would suggest, as we've talked about, cameraing the pipe to see what we've got. And as many of you in the room have known, you've heard me say many times, I'm not an expert here. I'm listening to those who are, our city attorney and manager, our public works, and our engineer. But having been in difficult situations in my business career, I have found the one thing that's very helpful is getting a second opinion. Being able to sit down with someone and say, hey, what do you think? Because I found things I've missed, even though I've been a CPA for 40 years, there's things I've missed. So I would recommend that we contact either the county engineer or an engineer from another city to offer assistance. Eric, you're still in charge as our city engineer, but to relieve the pressure, as Councilmember Dalpas talked about, laying that all on, in this unusual circumstance, on one individual, I think might be a little bit unfair. So my suggestion would be that we get that information, we get that supporting opinion, camera the thing, and then we have adequate information. If Eric, Dave, and John come back and tell this council this is what we found, and yes, we feel that's the best alternative is to dredge, that we authorize that to proceed and the resources to do so. But I think we need to find that out real quick. Does that sound fair? Councilmember Dalpas?
I should have mentioned this. One of my greatest concerns is the snowpack is unprecedented. It's all-time records. I saw something yesterday that showed that Ben Lomond Peak has 83 inches of snow water equivalents right now. It has not dipped down like some other peaks have started to do with the warming up. It's still the same amount, probably because of additional snow that we've had recently. And they don't have a snow-tell site on Lewis Peak, so we don't know exactly how much is up there. But there's a good educated guess that Lewis Peak would have 60 to 70 inches of snow water equivalents, which is double the statewide average. And so I think that's something that's why the urgency to get that channel done is so pressing on my mind.
And I think we can move quickly. I think we have the resources and, Ben Lomond Peak, I think, and Ben Lomond Trail has, as I understand it, more water than any place in the state. And I was asking Dave about that the other day. How does that come down, Dave? He says, here's how it comes down, Mayor.
Downhill.
It doesn't soak into the ground. It just comes downhill. There is nothing, we have some detention basins up there, but there's no culverts, there's no, if it doesn't go into the ground, it comes down, not only with water, right? So if council, we need additional resources, not, this is a big issue. And if we need additional resources, I would say we allow Eric and Dave to call upon lead experts. We're gonna have public comments here in just a sec, okay? That we move quickly, but we authorize the use of resources necessary to address all these issues that they pointed out. So that would be my comment. Not saying it's right, just an option to consider. But at this point in time, based upon the motion that was made earlier, and that allows some public comments at the end of the meeting, do we have a motion that anyone would like to state at this particular time?
Mayor, I'll make a motion. And it's got several moving parts to it. I'll move that we camera the pipe, right, ASAP, as soon as we can get that done. We get the second opinion either from another city engineer, from the county, or somebody.
Or outside, whatever.
Or outside, whatever, even if that means we have to pay somebody, whatever, get somebody in. And if we can get somebody that's a flood expert, right, that would be even better, right, that deals with, that's their specialty, right? And then if in the opinion of that engineer, and if the pipe is clear, that dredging won't be worse than doing nothing, right? Then we go ahead and dredge. If the pipe is plugged, or, you know, when we camera it, that it's got significant blockage that would create problems. Or if the second opinion says you're really best not to touch it. That's just confirming evidence, and we don't dredge in that situation. Is that clear to council, what I'm saying?
That might be based upon the recommendation that comes back after the consultation.
Absolutely. I think,
That would cover
so
your-
what I'm looking for is the pipe being clear and a recommendation from that second that somebody who's an expert, if we can get it, that, you know, man, you're really not gonna create a problem.
Can I try to simplify your motion there?
Absolutely.
Because I think if we have an engineer come in, as you stated, which is the first part of the camera, get an engineer, and the recommendation comes back through Eric and Dave to dredge, we do so, right, based upon the consultation.
And if the recommendation is not to dredge, then we don't.
Yeah, our decision is based upon the recommendation from the resources we just allowed. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's good.
You have a second to that motion? We have a second by Council Member Severing. Now for discussion, did you have a comment, Council Member Extra?
Yes, I was just wondering if we could add to his motion to build the check dam while that's low. Because, I mean, I don't know, that maybe that's a question of how much work that is to do, but if that's a fairly simple procedure, that gets done just for some peace of mind for the residents, if stuff starts coming down, something will catch before it gets blocking Tim's culvert.
That would require some dredging to build it.
Would
can't be built on top of what's already there, so we'd have to do some cleaning out and then build that check dam down low.
Is that's true, Eric? Okay,
So that probably be part of the solution that we come back.
okay,
If the recommendation comes back to dredge,
dredge,
then that
then
would be
build it
part
with them.
of it.
Okay,
Good question,
all
thank
right,
you.
thank you.
Councilmember Dawkins.
Discussion on anticipated timeline. Does the city have a camera pipe? We think we do, right? Or do we need to borrow one?
I believe with David, do we have a pipe camera, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but we were just talking, I think we have a good contact that we can get out ASAP. We have a contractor.
When you say ASAP,
We might be able to give them this morning, so
That'd be great.
we'll shoot for that.
Councilmember Severing said that if we put a harness on him, he'll crawl down there.
There's only one of us that can fit in those pipes and still stand.
Based upon what we know, you have a little bit of time, but I don't think we want to use it all up.
Right.
The weather seems to be cooperating a little bit. So,
Sorry.
go ahead, I just wanted to get the citizens.
The other thing is with the consultation of an additional engineer, I can't anticipate that that will
Yes.
take a long time. But my only concern there is that we might be taking too much time. So what's the goal of the date goal that we have that finished by Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday? I'm just saying.
Wednesday is the latest, I would say.
I would say that,
We can't get an extra,
you know, I found a long time ago, sometimes the fastest way to get something done is to move slower. You know what I mean? And I want to, you know, I trust Dave and Eric. I think they know this, the urgency, the council's expressed that urgency. So, I found too, setting deadlines for them when we know nothing about the resources availability is unfair. So I would say that we've made it very clear, we have a sense of urgency here. And that they move as quickly as possible, but imposing deadlines on them, not knowing what the resources are, is probably highly unfair, just my opinion. So is it clear, Dave and Eric and John, the intention of this council to move as quickly as resources allow so that we can protect our whole, to our point here, our obligation to keep that water flowing and protect property and life the best we can?
Do we want a nominated flood czar?
My feeling is that you can call upon any member of this council, similar to Dave's problem.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I might be the only one that's retired here. I'm more than happy to help, but asking one person to be on duty basically 24 hours.
Okay.
So give assignments to each council member that's available. I know not everybody's available, but give specific council members assignments for basically shifts. I'm not aware of anybody that wouldn't be willing to do that.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion, I believe.
Yep.
Lost.
And
We've had discussions, we've had a second, it's time for a vote. I'm gonna take a roll call vote here. Councilmember Swanson, I think we're starting with you.
yes.
Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpas.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now take a couple minutes if anyone would like to comment. We have 4 minutes. We have to end at 9:15. Jeff, go ahead.
I would just encourage anyone that hasn't come and looked at the ditch in front of my place to come and look at it, because it's at least 10 feet wide now. And the water's only about this deep, and it's getting wider because it's so full of gravel, and it's undercut the road. A couple of you have seen it by like 3 feet. So if you haven't seen it, you need to come and look at that. It's just getting wide. It's 10 feet wide at least.
I'm not aware of anybody that hasn't been down. You may not have been there, but
Everybody's seen the undercut road.
it's not good. Thank you, Ben. Okay. Quickly, Chad?
So first, I want to thank everybody here. There's two issues. I want to hear more about what's upstream. We can talk about dredging this downstream all day long. If we don't keep gravel out, which was, you can set up what you got to set, but that's going to catch steam in the future. We'll do okay. But if we don't keep that gravel from going forward, no matter what we do in front of Jeff's house, it's not going to matter. I mean, it is. And then the other thing you talked about, like an open ditch, you're responsible to move water. Landscape moves water in an open ditch, right? You said, we got the landscape, you got the water. We have to take care of the landscape. I like to hear about getting the back truck in, because you can't dredge with that bucket in front of King's house at 925, you destroy the landscape. You can't do that at 933 either. So you can dredge with a bucket in front of 905 and 855, but why not get the back truck up there and suck what's in front of 925, 933, and I don't know what the Starks looks like, but in front of 933, it's gravel this deep, right? The ditch, same thing, and that just fills up all the way up. So can we get the back truck, back up those two, and dredge buckets, the other 805, 905, 855, and 905. But we gotta keep gravel out. That is like the bottom line.
Okay, thanks.
And I hope we have FEMA money out of this to deal with this thing a little more aggressively going forward.
Thank you.
I'm gonna kind of go off what he
State
said,
your
wherever
name.
that culvert, oh,
State
sorry,
your-
Becky Martin. Sorry, I apologize. Becky Martin. Wherever that culvert starts, that empties at the top of Mountain Road 1700 right there, or Fruitland and 17. Wherever that starts needs to be addressed. Because that is undercut all the way from wherever it starts, clear down to the end of that culvert. Meaning that you need to control that water flow at the top before you start controlling at the bottom. In your plumbing, I'm sure that in your city codes, that you have rules on reductions in plumbing, right? So if you have a 5-foot hole of water that's trying to fit into a 24-inch hole, there's gonna be a problem. For irrigation, I've worked with Warren Irrigation Company for at least 10 years. And there's things, whenever you're gonna put a culvert, you have to have what they call a bib around it that is at least 6 to 12 inches wider than the hole that's coming in. So when you're dredging and making that hole bigger, you need to think about it's gonna undercut whatever isn't there. And then keeping it clean, the gate thing is a great idea. I don't disagree with that. It's gonna be a little difficult to get installed with water in the ditch, so if you can do it when it's not, that's a good idea. Keeping it clean is a problem, but citizens can help. And then pioneer ditches are lined with clay, right? They have at least 10 inches of clay usually around them. So anytime, I would just be very, very cautious of doing anything with the side ditches, which it feels like has already been mentioned. But like, I would just be really cautious and just know that when this is all done and said, that those bottoms of the ditches are going to have to be repaired to be able to keep their integrity.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're getting close, so please help
I'll
us.
make this quick. I think we've been gifted with the weather a reprieve so that we can act quickly. I know I personally rented a mini excavator to pull gravel out of my ditch, and as I did that with the high flow, it brought the gravel levels uphill from me down because it gave a place for it to settle to where it could be excavated. Tim's gravel level dropped 6 inches just from me digging out at mine because it was able to flow down out of the rocked ditch and into mine. And I think my concern with saying like the culvert down the line, if it's 30% full, we can't dredge. We haven't seen a small portion of what's coming down. Like if it's 30% full, we need to get 30% out so that it's not gonna be 50% full on the Sunday, Monday when it warms up. And then on the next warm up, it's 80% full, because then we're really in big trouble. I think we just need to, act like ants and not like grasshoppers, if you know what I mean,
All right.
Tim Jones, I've got a cousin who runs an excavation company up in the Ogden Valley area. He's the water master for Huntsville, Liberty, and Eden. And like I said, he has huge expertise in excavation. I spoke with him last night. He would be a great resource if you want to, I can give you his information. Does Bonavista Vista have any responsibility whatsoever by turning water out of their tanks? If it's their water, why are they, I understand why they release it. But is it legal for them to release water that they own down our ditch? Why don't they have the foresight to put a retention basin up there? Too little, too late right now, I get that. But do they have any legal responsibility for pushing water down to us? Third, even if we don't dredge, I would like to see our sandbag walls. I'm at 3 feet to 3 bags high right now. Do we have the resources? I would like to go at least 6 bags high, maybe 4 wide. We haven't talked about much sandbagging today. That water's got to go somewhere. If we don't dredge, that just puts that water table that much higher. So do we have the resources, the sandbags? I know we've got the people to fill them, but do we have the resources right now? And while it's calm, should we be building those walls higher and wider?
All right, thanks.
All right, last comment, please.
Jonathan Jitris at 873 East 1700. I appreciate again the ability to meet in that. One thing we talked about yesterday, I don't know has been brought up in all of this, up in higher on 1700 where we have diverted the river so it goes on both sides. When we dredge, well, one of the ideas we had is we have the ability to block that off fully and move most, if not all, the water across the street that while we dredge, there's no water in the basin below it. And with some of that being filled and knowing that we're worried about things washing down, if we do dredge, can't we just, well, it's low, I know we can't do it when it gets high, but we could block the entire river off, our entire ditch, and we could dredge with no water in it, which would, I think, eliminate almost any issue of things going down and clogging the pipe. I don't know if that's an idea or thought, but we've already diverted it across the river. We've already got infrastructure in place. You can almost put a single board down there or a big piece of ply board and cut almost 100% of the flow off for an hour where we dredge lower and clean stuff up. There's no ability for water to keep pushing things down. And I think if we're gonna dredge, or if we're thinking, we got a lot of thoughts, there's a great opportunity to dredge dry or with no ability to keep pushing things down while we're dredging. So just a suggestion and thought.
Thank you. All right, council, I would look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second. Seconded.